Hey guys, gals, and MBs. I'm going to make a video today on some tips that I've accumulated over 25 years of experience with synths, and 7 of those years being on YouTube. A little over 7 years, almost 8 years at this point. I got the idea from this video from Devin. I will put a link to their video in the comments section or the video information section, and it's well worth a watch. It's like 12 tips for music production and things like that over 12 years of experience, and it's a good watch, and I agree with pretty much everything in there except for pan spread, but we'll get into that later. So I'm kind of just joking on that, but all right. So my first tip is going to be using loopers, just loopers in general for Pertronics, things like that. You can just do some lovely things. Here's like an example. Go through my channel, find some of the things that I've done with Pertronics on the El Capistan and things. It's just such a lovely way of getting an idea down and potentially making a whole song around that structure. It's super fun, it's super enjoyable, and it is an inspiration thing. You can use software to do it, you can use hardware to do it. Any way you do it is fine. So loopers in general, definitely something that I've used to make music. So the other thing I'm going to say is you can go ahead and use something like your DAW or a synth sequencer to quantize some notes and then play over them unquantized, and you can do some pretty cool things with that. I'll just give a really quick example with that. I'm going to use my TO5 here, so we'll use this patch I made. We're going to go ahead and record a quick sequence in here. And I should say you need a synth that has a sequencer that lets you play along with it. The cheapest one that I know of that I absolutely love that lets you do it, well, there's plenty. Don't listen to me on that specific synth, but I was going to say the Minilog XD lets you do it, and it's really fun on that. All right, and then let's go ahead and play that back. And then you just play along with it. Yeah, so you get the idea, but you can do that within your DAW as well, and you can have a completely quantized root track, and then all of your subtracks on top of that. Then you just, you make for interesting syncopations and things like that. It's a really good way to keep in time, but have a little bit of variance with your other subtracks on that. So just something I like to do. So the other thing I'm going to say is ARPs can be fun too. So let's just go back here. We'll bring up the ARP, and we'll use it in something called assign mode. So you'll just have to see with the synth or the DAW that you're using which works out for you. But this has an assign mode, which means that if we go into the mode assign, the next note that you play in your sequence is going to be the next part that it plays. So here, right? It's just playing one note. As opposed to like up and down or random and things like that. It'll pick out the next note that you want. And it works really well for gating out notes and keeping in time. Especially if you're using effects. So like, let's say if I bring in the delay, let's bring in the BBD delay, bring up the time. So, and we'll bring up some of the repeats here, but this is what I mean in that case. Now your clock synced. Again, on the whole idea of interesting syncopations and things like that. All right. So the next thing I want to say is DAWless is interesting and can be fun, but I've went back to a DAW, and DAWs are way easier to do everything. You can do a hybrid setup like I'm doing, or you can just totally do it within the DAW itself. I like the hybrid setup because it is way easier to get your ideas out, play them back perfectly, or, record them out in a MIDI sequence and then have your synth play them, and then it's easy just to tweak things and not have to worry about finishing it on a piece of hardware that is counterintuitive and hard to use. I've used like hardware recorders since the late 90s, and they all suck. And especially with how synths or DAWs are these days, it's just so much easier to do it within the DAW. That's just my opinion. And if you want to say something along the lines, well, I work an IT job and I don't want to deal with a computer when I get home, well, mix it up. I use the hellish nightmare fuel that is Microsoft at work. But when I get home, I use a Mac OS to deal with all that stuff, or use Linux. My DAW choice is Logic, but I really like Reaper as well, and that runs in Linux. So just mix it up. Use a different operating system. That's why I'm bringing up Reaper, so you don't have to like say, oh, I'm going to have to pay for a Mac. Just use Reaper on Linux, for instance, instead of using something on Windows, right? So just some thoughts with that. That's how I get around the burnout of having a IT job and using a computer for music as well. All right, and then the next thing that I want to bring up is be unique. Don't try and just outright copy other people. Be unique. Obviously, you can tell I'm being very unique with the whole new thing that I'm doing with the VTuber stuff, and I mean, to some people's chagrin, but whatever. It's fine. I love doing it, and it's interesting. It's new, unique, and it's not like everybody else. So be unique. Try something new. If people give you a hard time or shit about it, just don't listen to them. We don't need all the cookie cutter crap that's happening. I mean, with people using AI for everything nowadays, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get anything new if you don't try something new. So, like I said, be unique. That brings me into another thing that I want to say. Don't go into this whole music game. If you're doing it as a hobby, then that's totally fine. But don't go into it thinking you're going to make money on it or with that mentality. You're going to make soulless just crap, in my opinion, when you are set out to do that. If you're doing it for the passion of the music and then it really shows in your music, that's great. That's what I want to listen to. I don't want to hear the standard cookie cutter crap that's played almost all the time. I like unique, interesting stuff. So yeah, don't go into it thinking that you're going to make music like money off of it. If you really want to have a product that you're proud of, I mean, you can just try and make money off of it, but whatever. I always get asked that, and it's super daunting when people ask after I say I do YouTubing on the side and it's music based. How much money do you make on it? I don't, because that's not my goal. It's a hobby. So yeah, just that's my perspective on it. Your hobby can turn into something professional once you get very good at it, but you're coming at a point of passion, not just trying to make money, which is where I was going with that. Right. And so the other thing I want to bring up is using effects as an instrument. I have, for example, this track here. It's going to play in the background while I talk, but just effects can be instruments in their own right, and that's how I use them. That's another thing that sets my channel apart, is my uniqueness comes from using a lot of effects with synths. So at least that's what I feel, and I've been doing it for a very long time. It's kind of what really got me to do the YouTube game. But yeah, think of effects, at least I think of effects as another instrument in itself, and you can do some really cool stuff with that. So let's just go over to my microcosm that I have conveniently here plugged into my TO5. We'll just use that same patch again. We'll turn off the ARP and the delay. And now that gets transformed into this. Case in point, it's an instrument in itself, so it can be very fun. Even just something as simple as a delay, just getting your syncopations in just this artistic way. It's just a lovely thing that I really like to do. So again, effects are just as important to me as the synth is. So let's get into hardware stuff in general. So hardware and software. One thing I want to bring up is when you set out to look for a soft synth or hardware, it doesn't matter. They both sound fantastic these days. I'm not going to judge on what you use. I use both. I use soft and hardware. Get really good at one or two pieces of software or hardware synths. Don't try to become a master at many things, because you're going to be mediocre at it unless you're a savant at things like that. But yeah, that brings me into the TO5, for example. The TO5 is just such an easy synth, for instance, and something like the Minilog XD, also great sounding synth, also super easy to make stuff with. Don't go into it expecting to buy a cheap synth just because you want a hardware synth and then that it's going to be right for you. If you're in that mentality, use some soft synths first. Don't just blow your money on a synth that's not going to grow with you. Don't get the simplest thing just because you can get it right then and there. Get something nice that you like the sound of, that you've looked and done research for. Look at videos, find the sound you like. If you can, try and use one in a store or something like that. That's getting harder to do these days. But yeah, find one you like the sound of that has a good UI, and UI is super important. If it has a shitty UI, so I love the sound of Electron devices, so like the Digitone and Digitact. You don't see me use them all that much, or I don't use them at all anymore. I've sold them all off because the interface is about as intuitive as trying to, like, I don't even know. It's awful. It's like trying to use Excel to make music. So that's just about as fun as I've had with Electron gear. Yes, the Digitone sounds absolutely phenomenal, but I can get similar tones out of something like the Op6, and that is much more fun to use. So yeah, find something you love the UI for that you can make sounds out of easily, unless you're just going to use presets, which is totally fine. You can do that too. You can get preset packs, and some of them sound absolutely fantastic. If your whole idea of making music is just to do the music composition part and not sound design, then this can be thrown out the window. Just find a synth that you like the sound of. But if you're going to do sound design as well, find something that's super easy. And here, I'm just going to give a really quick example. So let's make an init patch. Let's add some release on the amp envelope. And then let's bring in a second oscillator, which I just did. Let's tune them both to C sharp. C sharp. Kind of hard to do on this synth, but add some detune for second oscillator. Get some natural chorusing. Let's go ahead and add some pan spread so we can make it stereo. So we're going to go into voice spread, switch it over to panning, which I just passed. Let's turn it up to 100. And just that simply, we can even add a sub oscillator. It's like you find a synth with just a lovely sweet spot. That's easy to do because you'll be so inspired to make music quickly and just fun. And there's soft synths that sound like that too, that just make it so easy and fun to do. Get a good controller, deal with that way. All right, I mean, like, we can even make it better. Let's add some resonance where this thing really shines. So we're going to turn this up. We're going to turn the attack up, decay, sustain, give it some release. We'll do it like that. We'll turn the resonance up. Turn on envelope retrigger, which is ideal for long attacks. But yeah, I'm getting at the point. I just wanted to show that. Look at how quick that was to get a perfectly sounding synth patch out of it. That's kind of what you want. You want to get that good at a synth. And then writing music alongside that or making sound design for it just becomes like a treat to deal with instead of a slog. Like, yeah, I know I'm hating on Electron, but God, the Digitone just made me so sad to use because it sounded so good. But yeah, it's just that easy to get a good sound out of something. And then again, back to the whole effects chain, we add that back in, right? I'm saying use it as an instrument itself. Yeah. So you get the idea. So that's interface matters a lot. Getting things out quickly to make it entertaining for yourself when you're using it, doing it as a hobby. Even if you are doing it professionally, you don't want something that you're spending hours tweaking the sound on to get it to sound just right because it's annoying to use. Not because I'll spend hours on this just tweaking it to get it to sound just right, not because it's annoying to use, but because it has so much to offer and it's so easy to do. So yeah, that's kind of my my overview of some of the tips I wanted to share with everybody on how I like to do things, and I hope that helps somebody out. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and you like my content, go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you next time. All right, bye.